affirmative at the end of this debate to transform the dynamics of the classroom through our model of affective education, which because we have won the necessity of affirmation when the way that the classroom has oriented itself until the Speech Act of the NYU was meant to bar our presence from being within these spaces unless we subject ourselves to the accommodation that contribute to our self-loathing. They have only tell us to leave these spaces, which means that they have opened up no possibility for us to even come in here and provide the experience that leads us to even want to build these models in the first place, which is a sequencing argument that they are not coming to grasp us, which is the fact that this individuality, this expression of our identity is what allows us to collectivize in the first place, because we can fucking empathize with each other inside of spaces like these, because this is what provides hope, this is what fucking gets us on to the fucking next day, which is why I refuse to fucking leave these spaces, which is why all their argument is about how this space is irredeemable, about how this space does not have any place in the formulations of resistance are fucking bullshit, especially when they indicate that this space is where they build the very models that they say you need to vote for when you vote negative. Now they won't get to win the debate if there's a single risk that a negative ballot becomes a vehicle of validation for the negative through voting for the alternative, because they have asked for your ballot to validate them in about a million different ways in this debate, especially in the 2NR. This conceded double turn is an independent reason why you can vote affirmative on presumption. First they said voting negative challenges structures. What structures are inevitably challenged? What have they done to change the ways in which the classroom has notoriously rooted us out of these spaces and shipped us off to fucking prison cells? They just said and asserted that they have done something to challenge those things, but our argument is that our very presence in here challenges those things when these fucking spaces were always denied to us, when these spaces were something that we were never supposed to have with a fucking GED and a third grade fucking education. Second, their Roberts evidence, they said that when they want you to validate a class struggle and what that means, but our argument is that this validation is ultimately something that recreates the conditions of commodification in the academy, because if the ballot is so fucking violent, then that would ultimately turn the class struggle, because it would mean that the class struggle itself is commodified inside spaces like these. Third, they want you to validate their model of a mobile, I already said that. They say evaluate consequences, not intent, but you should evaluate the way that their curriculum has consequences, and you should not evaluate the intent of their alternative, because their alternative is only rooted us out inside of spaces like these, especially in a world in which they can refer to fucking children in the third world as fucking third worlders, first of all, as fucking slaves, second of all, and as fucking maquiladora factory workers, as sweatshop workers. There's no opportunity to pursue happiness for the commodified objects of capitalism, because they would indicate that happiness is impossible, which means that there's never a fucking humanity that they can see in us. There's never value to our life that we can self-produce, because they can just fucking write us off in these spaces and then use us as impacts to deploy in rhetorical situations to deny other causes of the oppressed. Now, even if they win their validations argument, you should not punish us for it when they've conceded that this commodification occurs inevitably no matter what we do. This is our unknowability argument, which is the fact that unknowability means that people can act violently on us no matter what. It does not matter if I'm speaking out about my experiences. It does not matter if I'm maintaining silence, so long as the school to prison pipeline is a material fucking reality for black and brown people today. Now, all of their arguments were centered around the fact that the 1AC should have never happened, which is why it's fucking try or die for the affirmative at the end of this debate, because over and over again we need to do the shit that clogs the systems of the school to prison pipeline, as Anthony's been saying, because every single time we come into these spaces, in spite of those forces, is a clog in the school to prison pipeline. It's something that physically makes it stop. That's our piece of evidence. Which means that the F is the only way to address the prison pipeline as a shift away from reactionary disciplinary techniques that are used to nullify our experiences within the classroom. The F is the only model that moves towards the deliberate, preventative, and interventionary programs. That's our Lowry evidence, which indicates and assumes the status quo educational model that all of their links are predicated on, which is the result of the reactive punishment models, which we physically reject through our insubordination inside of spaces like these. They say that they consider the fact that they're just as much about revenge in this space. They have resentment towards the sharing of individual experiences to the point in time in which they would necessitate that you reject those in every single instance. Also, the validation and ballot argument is the reason why you should not even evaluate this impact to begin with. Now, we need to be fucking resentful, because the fact of the matter is that these situations have always barred us from discussion. So fucking forgive me if I want to fucking challenge these systems in a way that is specific and self-determined by my experiences. Now, they consider the fact that there is no trade-off between individuality individuality in the collective, which is why we should form a collective of individuals, especially when the alternative does not influence y'all to mobilize. Y'all mobilize because you have individual relations to oppression that tells you to criticize the system, that tells you to move against the system, which is why their individuality trade-off arguments have no fucking warrants in this debate when these individualities are what allows us to collectivize in the first place. Now, they say they consider the fact that we are the antagonism. That's all of my stuff about how this presence was never meant to exist here. They say that they build models here through structural analysis, but they have not indicated what the result of their structural analysis is, other than the fact that maybe we go out and protest sometimes. Again, evaluate consequences, not intent. Now, they say that we fracture the movement, but they only fracture the movement when they tell fucking poor kids who work on $2 a day that the pursuit of happiness is something that they should never fucking have in the first place, which means that they build no hope for the fucking struggle, which means if anybody has fractured coalitions, it's the negative. Try or die for the F.